All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started now. So this is my first web tips. I'm Casey Kolowinski, and this is my first web tips with Clear Process Solutions. So forgive me if everything goes haywire and we have all sorts of technical problems. No, I'm kidding. I think we're going to do nice and good today. So our topic for today is going to talk about JavaScript inside of Winshuttle Composer. And we're just going to kind of give you a few easy tips that can actually trickle down and become what I like to call complex success. They potentially are some deeper use cases that are not known to a lot of people, but could potentially help you out quite a bit in a lot of scenarios. So, like I said, my name's Casey Kolowinski. We're going to talk just a little bit about logistics real quick and who I am, and then we'll get kind of right into it. Just thank you all for attending today. I know the state of the world's got us all a little bit different right now, so we appreciate you attending. And thanks for being on mute. Obviously, you come into webinars already on mute, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or the question and answer, and we'll get to them as quick as we can for you. So who am I? I'm Casey Kolowinski. I've been working around the tech industry for about 10 years now, and I've been working with process improvement automation tools for 7 of those or so. I joined CPS last October, I believe it was, but prior to that, I worked directly for Winshuttle for more than 6 years through their support team and their services team. I've been working with the Composer product since before it was born, working directly with the developers, and essentially I love helping customers, realize what their goals are for their business or their processes, and I love being able to use these unique tools that help us get there. So today we're going to kind of just talk about, like I said, a few different JavaScript tips that I've come across or worked through over time. And while we're not going to necessarily go into the exact details of the code, what I want to get at is that the abilities of what you can do within Composer with this JavaScript, and show you what CPS is capable of in helping you achieve some of these little bit more complex goals that you can do within the Composer environment. So I'm going to keep it nice and simple. That's the last slide until the end. We're going to go right into a nice demo of a few things, and I've got 5 kind of concepts we're going to talk through. We'll see how much we get through in the time we have allotted. But again, please interrupt me anytime with questions, and I'll get to them as quick as I can. I'm going to kind of go through this and explain each one, and maybe show you a little bit of the code that it takes, just to show you that there's not a ton of effort behind all of these to make kind of a cool little subset of features. So before we get started, does anyone have any questions? I'll get started and I'll pick up anything that comes along as we go. So the first feature that I want to show you is I call it creating a custom overlay. So when you're working with Composer, sometimes there's some actions that can take a little longer to complete, but they don't always give good user feedback to the end user. Well, this piece of code can kind of help with that. So if you have your long-running scenario, essentially we can write a little bit of code that wraps around that action and gives you a nice custom overlay. So we're going to give our text here, and we can manipulate this text in many different ways. The example I'm showing you here, we're doing it all up front so you can see it immediately. But we can put this in and hard code it. We can make it dynamic based on field values that are already in the form, however you need in your scenario, it can be customized to work that way. And then we're just going to pretend that we're doing a long-running long-running action by hitting tab outside of this text. As you can see, our text now shows up in a nice, pretty overlay. What that does is that allows the end user to have visibility into what's actually happening, right? If instead of the form just looking like it's locked up or not responsive, this gives that extra visibility with some level of control over it. Instead of it also just saying loading, we can actually tell the system, hey, when we're doing this, let's say something nice and friendly for that end user. And when it's done, we can have it do any number of things. We can move on to the next set of rules. We can move on to the next web service or query control. Or in the case of this example, we can just pop up a box that says, hey, action XYZ has now completed. In addition, I show that we can also, set field values. So that's the case of we're triggering another rule right after we've shown this overlay to keep our process moving. A prime example of where we can use some of this type of thing is a Winshuttle query web service. Sometimes doesn't always let us know precisely what's going on or when it ends. And then with a piece of code such as this, we can easily hop in and understand more about what's going on during that web service call in the query. So if we go and take a peek at the code, we just have a simple rule on this here. And it's a custom rule because we're working with that custom JavaScript. But all it takes is, in this case, about 43 lines of essentially pre-made code, right? We can just drag and drop this kind of thing into our solutions, and we have to replace a few different things and just get it to point to the next piece of the puzzle that you're looking for. But very simple. We don't have to massively customize or take a long time to get you a nice, easy little piece of pretty code to get your end users a nicer experience. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Again, if you have any questions about any of that, please feel free to ask, and I'll hop back and forth if we need to. The next one is a way to create a custom pop-up drop-down that lets you select an option or multiple options and place them somewhere else on your form. And I'll go into a nice use case on this one as soon as I show you the concept, because it makes more sense once we talk through it. But in this case, we're going to just go ahead and press a button. And now all of a sudden we have a pop-up that has a drop-down within it. Most situations in Composer, we don't have any interactivity inside these pop-ups. It's just a notification and we say, okay, or we hit cancel. In this case, we're utilizing some sort of data connection or data source to pull in data into a drop-down that exists on the pop-up all by itself. So in this case, we just have a few simple countries. The US, we switch to the UK, we can see we've got the ability to have not only the country code, but the potential for the country name as well through here. Or we have the ability to pick all. So we'll go back up. We're going to choose US in this first scenario, and we hit OK. And it lets us know it's been successfully copied. We can now see I picked one option, so I can see that it's back here and it goes wherever in the form that I need to use it. If I come back into here, you can say if I change UK, it obviously is going to do the same thing and change the result. But if I come in here and choose all, what it's going to actually go do is it's going to copy to a repeating element all of the potential options that you have in there. So we can do anything like that where it's one or all, one or many, depending on your situation. It's nice and customizable. So why would we need this? Where's the use case here? We've worked with a customer who had a case where they were creating customers. And when creating customers, you need to enter in address information. Well, they had a postal code set up where you needed to search by postal code. And in that, they had many times where they had situations where there's multiple cities within a postal code. And so they needed to be able to choose which was the correct city. So with a situation like this, basically, once they have their postal code, it pops this up with the potential choices that they have for cities. They can then pick the city that matches, or they can decide to choose multiple rows. It was a complex answer to how they could take that data of multiple postal code city relationships and get it down to what they needed. And this can obviously be expanded into any number of the Composer repeating elements, like a selectable table or a repeating group, as well as a repeating table. This bit of code takes a little bit more customization because you need to go in and you need to be able to figure out exactly what data you need for your dropdowns and whatever. But again, the vast majority of it is a nice and easy way that we can get this up and running for you nice and quick. All right, moving right along. Attachment controls on your Composer form. They've always kind of been a black box of sorts. And what I mean by that is the users add their attachments onto the form and they're just there. We don't have any visibility into what's going on with them. We can't really do extra validation against them. A number of things that are difficult because we don't have clear visibility into those attachment controls. We just have the option to add and delete files from them. So what we can do here is we can actually dig in and get some of that extra data. So if I come out here and choose a few different files, we're going to choose an Excel, a random, and a PDF. Just like normal, you can see them attached here from the regular Composer controls. And we can then work on our logic with the JavaScript. So in this case, again, I just have it triggered from a button. But what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and go check several things. One, it's going to let you know if there are any attachments whatsoever on the item. And it's going to be able to return a true or a false there, or any number of results if you need something different. Next is it's going to actually go ahead and give you the count of how many attachments are there if we need to do some level of validation against making sure that they've added 4 different attachments. And yes, the control itself does have some of those properties within it, but oftentimes they aren't quite deep enough for some of these more complex scenarios. So this gives us a little bit of easier visibility into that we can then work with and manipulate. And then lastly, and most importantly typically, is the ability to take all of the names of the files in the attachment control, and be able to populate them elsewhere in the form to use or manipulate. The most common use case is probably related to making sure that only certain file attachment or file types are attached. Like we only wanted to make sure they had a PDF. We could then build something in where there's a pop-up on submission that says, hey, you have an Excel file in here. We only accept PDFs, go fix it. Something along those lines. But now, because we can actually extract out those values into our forms, those next rules can be used in a more simple way instead of having to build more customization. So by kind of giving you this a little bit of an advanced feature with this piece of code, we can open you up to being able to use more out-of-the-box functionality with Composer for other pieces that you may need related to attachments. And again, on this one, if we take just a little peek in here, we can see we just have a rule on that button that again does some custom stuff. And you can see this is all that takes to be able to do that. So it's another nice and easy, fairly quick plug and play type of concept with the ability to get more flexible from there. And we have a question about the total file size of all attachments with that. So with what I currently have right here, it's not necessarily possible there. And the reason is that it's not truly stored out anywhere yet. It's just a reference to it at this point. So there isn't actually a way to tell that file size in this moment. With other ways, other pieces of the puzzle and other customizations, a little deeper than this type of thing, it would be possible to get all the file sizes of those reaching out into the SharePoint environment and talking through there to get more of the file sizes. It's nothing that I have on hand or is necessarily right away an easy thing. It is complex to get in there and make sure you get all those taken care of. Hope that answers your question. All right. So the next one is actually less of an end user trick or nice thing to have, and more of a developer type of situation, where there's sometimes when you're working with a form where it gets large, there's a lot of fields, and the ability to tell what's going on sometimes is really hard, right? We can't tell everything that's hidden on all our fields because we have rules and different views and all of that. Well, this kind of thing can show you this information at a glance really quickly. And so I'm just going to go ahead and press it and then we'll talk through it. So I've got two different options here. I can download it as a text file, or I can just display it in a table on the form. So I'm going to go ahead and do the display in table. So it's going to grab two things from every field in your solution. It doesn't care what view you're on. It doesn't care what items are shown on your view. It's going to go through the entire tree and find all of the fields. And it's going to show you two things. It's going to show you the actual XPath, and it's going to also show you the exact value of that field at that moment in time. Where I've found this useful personally is if we have some issues with scripts that may say error, fill in all required fields in SAP, right? But everything looks okay. You think that everything is filled out, but maybe there's something that didn't go right in the background, right? We have a field that's not on the view that you're on that just didn't get the right value or didn't get filled out, something like that. This helps give you that visibility into all the fields so you can figure out, oh, well, that happened like that. Or just as simple as, hey, I have a rule that's not firing quite right, and I need to figure out what it's actually giving as a value or what it's taking in as inputs for the value to make sure that all of your rules are triggering in a way that you expect. With that, this specific example that I am showing you here does not go into the depth of repeating elements, right? As we know, repeating elements take more effort with Composer to get the indexing correct and properly loop through each row so that you get all that data. So as you can see down here, we have this one, which actually equals what's in this table itself here. And then it gives a value of what looks like an XPath. That's because without putting in indexing, it's going to take the first row of this. So we're getting the XPath of this field, but then the value is actually what you see right here. And you can see the same concept applies on the second column as it gets the XPath for row 1 here, and then it takes the value from row 1 here. Now, we don't see the secondary rows. If this was set up like that, what we'd end up seeing is 8 or 12, however many more fields listed here, and they'd be similar to this, where we have the index value within it to get the actual row number along with it. And so you'd see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but depending on how many rows you have there. That's a little bit more complex. However, it's well within a nice little customization on top of what we have right here for you. And it's something that I've done many times. It's just, it usually is a very customer dependent situation. So we want to work directly with you to make sure that that's something that you want or need in your situation. If you do not want to see it on the form like that, there's a nice, easy ability to just download the file as a text file. It's going to give you the same exact information, but it's not clogging up your form. It's not doing things like that that get in your way. So this is an easy way to kind of have potentially a debug section on one of your views that you can open up, run this, and understand your values from here. And this obviously can be taken into a better text editor or moved over into Excel to look at a little cleaner if you don't want it to just be a text file. But it's nice and easily read line by line with the XPath and the value. Okay, and then the last one. So there is really easy ways to add rows to repeating tables, right? We can obviously just do this all day long. But deleting one is a little harder. We have to have the user know that they need to right click on this, the dots over here and click the delete. And then it prompts, right? It works, it's great, but it's not always the most flexible or the most capable way of doing it. So what we have here is an ability to go ahead and you can potentially have a variable from somewhere else in your form that says, you know, hey, maybe this value equals false, and so we need to make sure that we only delete the row where that value is false, things like that. This allows you to build those types of pieces of logic into what rows to delete instead of making it be a manual process. It gives you that automation. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and pick row number 3, and I press delete, and now you can see, obviously row 3 is gone. And I can continue to do that, right? If I still needed to get rid of row 3, I can do that again, just like that. The other thing that this does is it gives you the flexibility to have the validation, right? So when I press this button, I don't see a confirmation that says, are you sure you want to delete that row? But I can also add that in, right back in if I need to. It gives you that flexibility to be able to move and manipulate those rows as you so choose. The other cool thing is if I get rid of each row, instead of getting rid of the table, it's actually just going to be smart enough to just clear the value. So again, this is a nice little piece that can just be kind of dropped into your solutions, dropped in with you. All of the code that you have seen in action today is essentially plug and play to some extent, right? And that's how we want to help you. Is we want to make your processes nice and easy to make amazing, right? Make you the hero. So yeah, that kind of is the rest of my presentation. Please let me know if you have any other questions come in. I haven't seen many questions. I don't know if that's because you're just too amazed at what I did for you today, or if I'm just talking to myself and no one's there. All right. So we'll pull up this guy. And of course, as always, please let us know if you have any additional ideas for future web tips. And basically what we want to do is be able to share kind of what we have, right? But we don't always we don't always know what you're looking for, right? We have all these things in our head, and we have the ability to grab a bunch of this stuff and make this work for you guys, but we don't always know what you need. So please keep reaching out and talk to us about what you're looking for. This is also kind of I'm showing you a little bit of the puzzle, right? Obviously, you know, this is code, right? So there's certain pieces of it that we'll show and share if you directly, you know, want some of that. But we also, you know, need to work together on these solutions. We want to help make you successful and talk through the scenarios as best we can, to make sure that these are exactly what you're looking for, or maybe we need to tweak them to help make your project even more successful. So if you have any specific questions after the fact on any of what you saw, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to talk through them more specifically with you. Okay, so we have just a reminder that our next web tip is going to be Thursday, May 21st. The typical email if you have any suggestions or ideas for us, and you can always hop onto our YouTube channel to catch a replay of what's going on here, or any older web tips that were out there as well. I think we probably show this quite a bit, but it's just a reminder that, you know, we are different than just a typical Winshuttle maintenance contract, right? We have the ability to give you a lot more depth, a lot more hands-on help with making everything as amazing as we can for you. And that also includes other products, potentially with reporting, with Click, and other process BI type stuff. We do more with your SharePoint. We'll give you all the help you need, right? Just talk to us about it, and we can tell you more about the details behind it. And then lastly, we'll just give you the quick contact information for us. But again, please just reach out if you have any questions, and we will get back to you as soon as possible and get you going.